After 26 years, Evangelion is finally complete. That's definitely a weird thought for those who've been waiting since the release of 3.0 in 2012, but Studio Khara has finally finished their primary mission of completing the rebuilds. Evangelion reinvigorated the anime industry in the 90s, creating a boom that's been riding high ever since. But Evangelion itself was perhaps defined by its difficulties, both in terms of production and the personal struggles of its creator Hideaki Anno. Here's 5 things you need to know about Evangelion. GAINAX was never considered a particularly successful company. They managed to stay afloat by making games and model kits, but nothing else was making money. In fact, a few years ahead of Evangelion, director Hiroyuki Yamaga started production on his persistent idea for a Royal Space Force Wings of Honami sequel titled Uru in Blue. However, they never actually had the money for it, and just hoped they'd get the funding later on to pay for all the work they were doing. So when Hideaki Anno got the chance to make Evangelion for King Records, it was essentially their last chance. But not only did it not kill the company, it actually made money, which was considered a miracle at the time for the studio leadership. It made so much money that the president at the time started hoarding it to support the studio's tenuous future, until he went to jail for tax fraud in 1999. We often think of Evangelion as a GAINAX show, but in fact, most of the production was handled at the much larger Tatsunoko production. This was a tight schedule, made worse by constant production issues throughout the show. There was multiple reasons for this. One was that Hideaki Anno is remarkably slow when it comes to writing scripts, but also Anno specifically blames Tatsunoko, claiming that they lost a load of animation cells before they had been shot. But on the other hand, Tatsunoko hasn't admitted to this, and instead, according to former producer Toshio Okada, they blames the people at GAINAX. Hopefully they're all over it by now though. The team were absolutely exhausted from working on the Evangelion series, but they were passionate, few more so than assistant director Kazuya Tsurumaki. His perspective was that even if things were hard, they should push through it, regardless of the quality, and let the series be a testament to not only their efforts, but their breakdown as well. And so when it was decided that they would create an alternate ending in the form of End of Evangelion, he felt it was unnecessary, and while they had more time to make the film than the show, he didn't feel that same uplifting feeling. And so, while he did serve as co-director on the film, he was happy to be there to let it rest. Of course, this interview was before the rebuilds happened, so it was another couple decades before he could really be done with Eva. Initially, the idea for the rebuilds were quite simple. They wanted to remaster the original series, but after speaking to Studio Imagica about upscaling it, they found that it wouldn't look particularly good compared to modern anime, so they would have to remake it, or rebuild it. See? But the plan wasn't necessarily to make it at Khara. In fact, Khara was meant to be just a management company, so Anno went from studio to studio asking if they would help recreate the film. He got to Kinema Citrus and the president just told him, why don't you make it yourself? And so with Kinema Citrus and King Records' help, they formed a studio ready to rebuild Evangelion. Anno was burnt out working on the first 3 Evangelion films before eventually trying something new on Shin Godzilla. But when he returned to work on the final film in 2016, he was still struggling a lot with the script. There were several times that he would scrap the entire script and in the early days wouldn't appear at the studio at all. Eventually he completed it in early 2019 at the last possible acceptable moment. This isn't all that uncommon with Anno though. He's often struggled with scripts, with staff noting that his way of writing Evangelion was somewhat like a mangaka, where he would just write as he went along instead of planning things out overall, meaning that the whole animation process gets constantly pushed back. Hopefully he's able to take a break soon. Thanks for watching OTAQUEST in Japan. Feel free to subscribe to find out more about the art and creation of Japanese pop culture.